Welcome to Bare Bones. With your host, Danny Meehan and Dr. Mason West.
I still can't get over how cool that intro is. I am Mason West, and this is Danny Meehan. Danny, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. Guess I got some news that I'm comfortable sharing enough now. Mason is known. A couple of the other people in our Bears community is known. My wife is currently pregnant. I will not reveal the gender, as I know I do have family and friends that listen to this, and they do not know yet. But, yeah, going to be a dad. I'm a overgrown kid that's going to have a kid of his own in February.
That is just so exciting, dude. I'm so happy for you. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good time. You know, the wife is in the second trimester. She's doing about as well as you can think. Just pure fatigue, muscle aches, and food cravings that become aversions and vice versa.
Well, it sounds like if she was on this Bears team, she probably would have set out practice and been listed as, a DNP with how this list is going.
It's just what they do, just DNP.
But that kind of brings us into what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go over some of the news from this last week, some different articles and stuff that popped up, and then do the best preseason final game preview you can, I guess. It's, against the Buffalo Bills this Saturday, but that's, there's only so much we're going to talk about. It's a preseason still.
Dude, I was going to say, does anyone actually care? I watch because I'm a football junkie and I'm sick in the head, and for some reason Tyson Bagent-led football and PJ Walker-led football just really appeals to me. Because I'm a masochist, right? Masochist likes pain. I think it's masochism. Yeah.
I will say I didn't watch the last preseason game live. I had to go back and watch it later. And after, that PJ Walker section was hard to get through. And then the Bagent one was like, oh, this is cool. And then when Nathan Peterman came in, I was like, okay, this is hard to get through again.
The Peterman doesn't do it for you?
God, I'm just over that whole experience. At least there's something kind of interesting with the whole QB3 versus QB2 thing with Bagent because, Peterman, I appreciate what you did. The tank was awesome. You helped us get some losses. But other than that, I'm fine.
Pretty much where it's at.
But again, just touching on some news from today. Bears starters are going to play Saturday versus Buffalo. There will be a coaches meeting at 1:45 p.m. to determine how many snaps starters get, such as Justin Fields, ultimately how much they're going to play. I personally felt that this was important for this team to get some reps here. Not like oh my God, doom and gloom important, but pretty important. What about you, Danny? I'm
with you, just because, again, maybe it's just the old, quote unquote, old school in me, the coach, the whatever, the former player, et cetera, et cetera. Just there is a necessary callousing. I know I said that in our last show, but there is something that you need to do this. You need to hit until, even full contact practices aren't full contact. It's the thud or the smack or whatever you want to call it. They're not going to the ground.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a technique to how do you fall, right? I mean, I work on that with patients who are coming back from injuries. I'm like, all right, well, you rolled your ankle, you tore your ACL, whatever. Well, how do you take contact? That's super important. Mm-hmm. And not just that. So let's say, for the sake of argument too, and we know that there's going to be a new center, and it sounds like it's going to be Lucas Patrick. How many snaps has Justin really taken from Lucas Patrick? Period. And then, obviously you go back to last year, there were some, but then how many live reps has he taken snaps from Lucas Patrick?
Minimal.
So even if it's only, I don't know, let's say 20 snaps, those 20 snaps are good. You work out some of the kinks, the rust, the communication, that this line is going to be playing together live for the first time, whatever that concoction ends up ultimately being. You know, let's say it's going to be Braxton Jones, Cody Whitehair, Lucas Patrick, Nate Davis, and then you got I'm thinking Darnell Wright. We'll get to that in a second, but or whoever else that might be. You still need the communication is super important with all that. So let them play. You know, we haven't gotten to see that, and also we haven't seen Justin throw the ball down the field. He had 3 passes, through all 3 of which were very short, 2 of which were screens specifically. So throwing the ball downfield and getting some tempo will be nice too.
Yeah, that would be really nice. And just you want to see your starters play. Like, I get it, and I understand to an extent why we didn't see them play in Indianapolis, because they probably had what they deemed 2 true preseason games in those live practices. But it doesn't. It's not live practice. It's not a game. But yeah, I mean, I'll be watching because I'm sadistic and this is just what I do. But
and I was going to save this for a future section, but yes, Lucas Patrick is in fact day to day again. We'll touch on that more specifically, but that does matter too, because if it's not Lucas Patrick and Cody Whitehair can't snap, who is your center? Are you going to roll out Doug Kramer, who I'm not a big fan of? Or
I don't think Doug Kramer can play, man.
From what I've seen, he's not good. So there's that one Twitter account. It's like @I'm bearing down or something like that. I should grab it because he does whoever that is does a very good job of compiling snaps and putting them on Twitter. But they put together the Doug Kramer one, and every play was either him whiffing or him not moving somebody. It was like he was pushing a sled that just was too heavy and he wasn't going anywhere, just running in place.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's not Doug Kramer, who's your and Lucas Patrick doesn't play. Cody Whitehair is your guard because of his hand. Who's your center?
The logic I would go to is we heard we had substantiated reports that Tyree Carter was taking snaps in mini camps and OTAs as the center.
Yeah,
that'd be my next logical step, right? Like he's probably the guy I'd most be interested in seeing play center if you're not going to have your regular starter, you know.
And that's another 2 people just brought that up, both N. White, boom, Dieter, and Cornelius Squalls also brought up Dieter Island. He's like someone that's interesting. I know he's got taken snaps there. It's interesting to me that he's been here for a while, right? I mean, because he wasn't part of this team in the Pace regime.
He was brought here by Pace. He wasn't brought here by Pulse.
Right. So he's here from the Pace regime. Obviously, they've kept him. He's been here. They went out and got a Lucas Patrick. Right. They went out and decided to, move Cody Whitehair. Like they had Tyree Carter take snaps, like you said, in like OTAs and early. He just really hasn't been in their plan. I think there's a reason for that. Like they know best, and he hasn't even been considered.
Yeah, I mean, but I guess you could make the argument the other way of they've kept him around. So there's clearly something he does that they like.
I just don't know what it is.
Yeah, what that is, I have no idea. I mean, he's an interesting profile. He's a former rugby player. He's a good athlete, testing wise. And I think he went to Princeton, right? Princeton or Yale? I know he's an Ivy League kid. Like I remember watching him after he got drafted. I do apologize. I can't recall what school he went to, but I remember noticing that even on film that he moved well. So, but that's probably the former rugby player, because in rugby, everybody has to move. It's not just your little phone booth action that some interior guys have to deal with.
He went to Yale.
Yale.
Just for those who cared. So anyway, long story short, yes, Patrick's day-to-day, but at this point, without any information, again, this is just me going off what I'm understanding of their situation right now, which we'll talk about in a second. I would think it's going to be Patrick, but we'll get into that more in a second. First, you brought up this Bill Barnwell article. I know we both kind of glazed over it a little bit, but what was the gist of that article?
The gist of it was they were one of the 4 teams deemed most likely to take a big step forward or progress in a positive way this year. And funny enough, they did the 4 teams most likely to regress and come back and normalize. And one of those 4 teams was actually Minnesota, which everyone's already kind of picked up on because of the amount of 1-score games they won.
Oh, it's crazy. The number of 1-score games. You just take the Bears games, right? If there wasn't a fumble by a certain player, I refuse to talk about on this podcast anymore. In the Vikings game, the Bears were marching down the field. They could have very easily won that game. Not that I'm saying, they got the number 1 pick. Things happen. We're all good with it, but it wasn't exactly like the Vikings were trouncing people.
Nope.
But so, again, I didn't heavily read that article, but it makes sense, right? In terms of why the Bears would be a team that's going to make a jump. They lost a bunch of one-score games. The hope is that this offensive line, when healthy, is going to be a pretty solid, like top, I would go as far as at least top 20, if not top 15 unit. You brought in a DJ Moore. You have your number, and all the things talk about. The run game should be really solid. The biggest question I think that would prevent them from doing that is, do they prevent enough points being scored? Specifically, is their defensive line good enough to stop the run and rush the quarterback?
So I have a really not weird, but just a fascinating thought I want to run by you because of who Eberflus is. He's the blood from a stone coach, right? Kind of like a John Harbaugh, Sean McDermott when he first got to Buffalo, et cetera, et cetera. These guys that are supposed to get more than the sum of their parts. The Bears' back five, however you want to quantify the secondary, on top of the guys they brought in for the linebacking core, Noah Sewell, Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, et cetera. Is it possible that in spite of everything, if they even get below average defensive line play, that they're going to be better defensively than any of us think? Because it's clear they bought in. Like just how they're very talkative, they're very chirpy, they're chippy almost. Like I know I mentioned Cortland Finnegan a couple episodes back in a comparison to Tyreek Stevenson, like mentality wise, but I almost wonder if we can expect, and I'm not saying Jeff Fisher is who you want to be as a coach, but like Jeff Fisher's defense has always played with like a certain level of edge, or even like the Legion of Boom played with a certain level of edge when they were coming up and getting better, So I wonder if that is something we could see where they will themselves to a top 18 unit, top 20 unit.
I would say so. I would agree.
Just because of how they play, how hard they play.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just look just as far back as Eberflus's defenses with the Colts. I mean, yes, you had your DeForest Buckners and you had your Shaquille Leonards of the world, but I mean, like Kenny Moore wasn't anyone until he became Kenny Moore as a part of these defenses. I don't know that you can name that many edges with the Colts off the top of your head that were like
Al-Qadim Muhammad.
Yeah, there you go. There's one. Fantastic. And then the same thing with the rest of that team. I mean, like it was a bunch of guys who played very well, played hard, that, aligned with the hits principle. And there's only one or two like true studs on that team. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely could buy that.
I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I have a feeling they're going to be better than we think. And I think they're going to be fun. They're going to have times where they're infuriating because they're young. They're going to make mistakes. For as good as Tremaine Edmonds is in terms of taking up space and being a great coverage linebacker, he is not a good run stopper. He's just not. TJ Edwards, while he made improvements in coverage, is more of your true like tackle to tackle. I'm going to run down and make these tackles. He's your run stopper. He's going to be the guy you rely on. Like it's very much going to be trying to be reminiscent of Urlacher and Briggs in the 2000s, where Urlacher was your coverage, run the seam, take away the deep third, and Briggs was there to play cleanup and with all the funneling. But it's different, but same kind of thing.
No, absolutely. All right. So before we get to some of these injuries we're going to talk about, we do have to do this little ad read here for our buddy Chris Davia over at Mighty Meals. Chris Davia puts the personal touch to healthy eating that most meal prep services are missing. I've been using his services for almost 3 years now and have not looked back. My Mighty Meals are cooked fresh and delivered directly to your home or worked weekly in the Chicagoland area. They taste great the day you get them, as well as the final day of your week as you anticipate your next delivery. Each meal is macro-friendly and makes it incredibly easy to track. You can choose from standard meals that are under 500 calories or heftier ones that are between 5 and 750 calories. The meals rotate each week, so I personally never get bored. A few examples: barbecue meatloaf and sweet potatoes, Italian turkey and couscous, Denver tater tot scramble. And then today I had like a chorizo egg hash. It was pretty dang good. Need something specific or have dietary restrictions? You can customize your order for just a little bit more. And one of my favorite parts is there isn't a subscription. So order the week you want them, get one meal, get 20 meals, skip a week, skip a month. It doesn't really matter. So, you're never wasting any meals. You're never wasting any money. So you can find him on Instagram at @MyMightyMeals and use the code GRIDIRON25 for 25% off your first order. at myminemeals.com. If you haven't done it yet, you absolutely should do it. Totally worth it. Injuries. So if there's any questions, feel free to throw them in chat as we're talking about this. But today, we got some good news. Bears tight end Cole Kmet practiced today after leaving early yesterday.
He was carted off, right?
He wasn't carted off. He was like slowly wobbled off was kind of the thing.
So he was wobble, baby, wobble, baby, wobble, baby, wobble.
Yeah. And they didn't really get into it at all. And actually, I know there were a couple tweets that were up. They were taken down. The Bears were pretty secretive with whatever was going on there with Kmet.
I for one, am shocked by that.
Yeah, right. And that's what a lot of this is going to be. And there's going to, if you can look, I had a little Twitter rant yesterday about this, where, as the media, there's a certain level of, okay, I just get to report what's happening, and then put the flair that you're putting on it. Yeah, if you're just going to list the 20 players, like, hey, these 20 players did not participate. Great. All right. Thank you for the information. But then when you do that, and then at the end of it say, this is concerning. And it's like you're just making the Bears fans freak the hell out. Like, just logically, right? There's 53 people ultimately on the final roster and 90-ish now. And then of those 20 people that were listed, a lot of those were starters and important people. Logically, how you really think that this team is that banged up that there's like 15 important people who are truly in dire straits for week one? That doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't. What it feels like more is precautionary. I don't want to say like to your like little title down here, the 3D chess. It probably is some gamesmanship, but it's also probably just we know that Eberflus is running a tough camp and running a tough practices, very much like Sean McDermott or Harbaugh notoriously runs hard practices. Andy Reid allegedly runs some of the hardest practices in the league. It might just be getting these guys rest and getting them ramped up for the season after a hard camp. That's probably the more logical answer, right? Like, maybe I'm being optimistic, but it feels logical. Not, a 30 or starters, they're done. Like, week one, just cross them off.
No, absolutely. That's where I'm aligned at. That in terms of things I've heard, in terms of also just logically what we're thinking. I mean, here's an example. So Yannick Ngakoue and Rasheem Green were also back, right? Because they were not playing earlier. Let's use logic. Why would Yannick Ngakoue not be participating in practice? Maybe because he needs more ramp up time, and because he did have a really hard Colts week when he came off the street. Was he doing his own workouts? Yeah, absolutely. But then he came into the training camp, and yeah, that's hard to do. So you probably need a little bit of a break there. People who were back, Deontay Foreman and Travis Homer, were full go. They just had some time off. Not that crazy. Now there are some people that still were not participating today, including Eddie Jackson, Jaquan Brisker, Claypool, Velus Jones, Darnell Wright, Nate Davis, Lucas Patrick, like I said the other day, DeMarcus Walker, Tevin Jenkins, Blackwell, Gates, Pettis, Reed, Cole, Ebner, Jones. So when you read it off like that, it sounds horrible, but some of them we know. Jenkins is going to be out for a couple weeks. Duh. Davis has been in and out the whole time, so I'm not. That's just whatever at this point. I don't even care. He's going to show up.
It definitely he's going to show up when the games count and everything matters. It very much feels like some of the stuff that was starting to kind of emanate out of Nashville, that he just doesn't like to practice and doesn't really care to, might be true. Now, if that's the case, I wonder if the front office and coaching staff got freaked by the okie doke, to quote Stuart Scott, as it were, like that but they thought they could change him, and he just was like, yeah, give me my money. I'll totally change. He got it, and he was like, yeah, I'm good. Thanks. He's a good player. But it just doesn't – I reiterated on the show several times. I hope if anything was seriously wrong or he had some sort of family issue that it would resolve. Well, we haven't gotten wind of anything. It just sounds like he kind of just doesn't want to do it. And that's whatever.
You heard that to an extent with Tremaine Edmonds, right? Like, he was interviewed when he did the presser. He was asked, where were you? What was going on? He's like, I had some personal stuff I was taking care of. And it's like, okay, you're back. That's all I care about. Wake me up when it's week one and there's an injury report and someone says hamstring doubtful. Then I'll be concerned.
Yeah, exactly.
But I know someone did specifically ask here. I am Scox asked, Claypool has been on the field in weeks, concerned. I mean, I'm not concerned in terms of him playing week 1. Even when he came off the field, it wasn't like he was carted off. It wasn't like, he was heavily limping. It was just he kind of came up a little lame during that play with Tyreek Stevenson. But at most, it'd be like maybe a little conditioning-ness to it, but like not in terms of playing, and it shouldn't affect him wholeheartedly.
To me, it just always, with that, it just seems like soft tissue issues are always so finicky. Like you could feel fine, you rush them back because the player says, hey, you're feeling fine. Because sometimes you got to protect players from themselves, right?
100%.
Like it seems like maybe they're just protecting him from himself. Like he could probably practice, but why risk him re-aggravating the hamstring when you want him for week 1? And he is really kind of viable to be your true other outside wide receiver at this, or not outside, but you're like your Allen Lazard role, which would be almost like your secondary wide receiver in this offense that Getsy's trying to create.
Well, again, outside of DJ Moore, I would argue Chase is the second most important wide receiver you have, because there isn't another player on the roster that can do what he does. In theory,
right, absolutely.
If he used his full component of skills, and as you put it, didn't act like a small guy in a big body. But just saying, like, I agree. Like, there are times he doesn't play big.
I'm not doing this today. Looks like Tarzan.
There are times
I know. Looks like Tarzan plays like Jane. It's fine.
But there's not anyone else really on the roster that fits that true like X type, right? And that's
and
why
he's really not gonna be an X anyway. He's gonna be like Lazard was. That's what they envisioned him being, was a souped up Allen Lazard. And in theory, if you could put Allen Lazard and like crack him out and make him like this supreme athlete, that'd be a hell of a player if he had Allen Lazard's work ethic and almost like moxie to him, because Allen Lazard is a self-made player in the NFL.
This is a good question from Cornelia Squalls. Is it just me, or am I the only one concerned about Whitehair playing guard with one hand? I think we saw this a little bit even last year with Lucas Patrick. I mean, he had a clubbed up hand that entire time playing inside. It affects your blocking, does it not?
I'm concerned about Cody Whitehair playing in general. He looked, after he got back from the injury last year, like he was washed. Cody washed hair.
It was better than dirty hair.
This is the entertainment people tune in for, Mason.
Exactly. Right? And so is it a concern? Yeah. I mean, because your offensive line play is grabbing and holding. I mean, it's just basically how much holding can you get away with. So if you're playing with I don't know who he's going to be playing with, but if it's a club, that sucks. That's really hard. Go back to Kyle Long even. I mean, yes, he was doing tackle at the time, but that was really rough for him. If it's just a heavily braced hand, it's still going to be tougher, but at the end of the day, is a mangled, whatever mangled is. It's not like he's Jason Pierre-Paul or anything, but is an injured, is an injured hand Cody Whitehair better than the next option, right? If you're playing Madden and he's injured and you look at his rating, is he a 74 with the injury and your next option's a 70? Then you go with your 74.
Well, no, what you do is you go sign the highest rated tackle in Madden and you move him to guard, and he immediately gets like 6 overall better because it's Madden.
God, Madden is so stupid sometimes. Like, I don't know why. I literally take 3-year gaps between buying it because it's just the same thing and the same stupidity. One thing to touch on, it's a little bit of old news now, but we do, I think, have to talk about Darnell Wright a little bit, just because, it was a big freak out and all that jazz. If you look, I'm leaning the wrong direction. If you look right there, if you're watching live, right? I mean, you can barely even see that brace. That thing is tiny. I know it's not the biggest picture in the world if you're watching live. If you're listening to the podcast, he's wearing like a super tiny ankle brace. It doesn't look like a brace. It's a sleeve.
It looks like something I would wear if I rolled my ankle playing pickup basketball as a 33-year-old man.
Yeah. He didn't come out. He didn't come out in a boot. He didn't come out in crutches. Right. So I'm ruling out high ankle sprain just from that alone. It's most likely an ATFL, the anterior talofibular ligament, like lateral ankle sprain. Just, the foot goes in, the body goes out. Just like Danny talked about, you land on someone's foot a little weird in basketball goes. Week 1 is so far away. He's going to be fine.
It's probably to dumb it down for the people listening. It's a roll. He mildly sprained his shit. It sounds like that's it.
And then there's other people attached to, well, he was limping off the field. He was limping the next day. Again, imagine the last time you had an ankle sprain. Like, you probably were limping for a couple days. It happens.
just remember to do your rice method. You're fine.
Oh, don't do the rice method. Fuck that thing. No, so we're done with the rice method. We don't no more rest, ice compression, elevate. Now it's
I know this. I just have to get you on your soapbox sometimes because you almost did it with me and Claypool. That's
yeah, I know. I'm trying to now remember like what the new stupid thing is. All right, I'm not going to be able to figure this out. I'm going to keep looking as we talk about other stuff. Done all right. Tevin Jenkins, not going to spend a lot of. No, oh yeah, I think I already found it. We're not going to talk about Tevin Jenkins a lot. In theory, we're hearing that it's a double calf strain. That one is a little more oomph than the sprain, excuse me, of the ligament, just because soft tissue, as Danny talked about earlier, is always tougher, especially both legs. Like, it's like, hey, I pulled my hammy. You can kind of like lean on the other leg. If you do both of them, it's kind of hard. And at the end of the day, it's about deloading and then slowly reloading, hence why the timeline is what it is. They say 6 weeks. My guess is it could be as early as 4. So you might see him week 2. It could be as long as 6. So you might see him week 4. But
honest to God, I wonder if, depending on how this weekend goes with Whitehair getting reps at left guard, I wonder if you hear a phone call to Dalton Risner happen, or if you see them claim someone who gets waived and they like, or if someone gets cut unexpectedly who's been underperforming in their current situation and has a bit of a bloated cap number or something like that, because they just can't. I can't imagine a scenario where you're just like, you did this last year with Patrick and Whitehair, or you tried to, and it became Mustafa and Whitehair, and it didn't work then. Why would it work now?
I 100% agree with that.
That's just my personal 2 cents on that. Dalton Risner would make a ton of sense, and it's actually kind of funny because I remember Risner coming out, coincidentally from Kansas State, was a very similar prospect to Cody Whitehair coming out also of Kansas State.
There's something for continuity, right? And that's I would assume that's what they're going for. They're saying what we have in camp, we want to keep it, all that jazz. But at some point, if your thing is, hey, just tell the dude, block the person to your left or right, block the person in front of you. Like, if their just skills are better, at some point, just go get the person. You know what I mean?
Right.
But we'll see. When cutout day happens, there should be some shuffling. One more thing I wanted to bring up. Actually, I guess we should do these other two. All right, QB2 competition up for grabs, according to Luke Getzey, according to Eberflus. Does that matter for you? And if so, what do you think about it?
I don't think it matters much because Peterman, the Peterman, isn't vying for that spot.
He's already had the conversation.
Yeah. Do you actually think they're going to make their quarterback to an undrafted free agent from a subdivision, like a low-level competition? I personally, if you're actually making all things equal, I don't mind the idea, because if Justin goes down for an extended period of time anyway, it's over with. The season's down the toilet. Agreed. But if it's for a week or two because Justin sprains his off-throwing wrist or something like that because he gets hit and braces himself going to the ground, something stupid like that,
Yeah.
The coaching staff is going to want a steady hand in the vein of a similar player. PJ Walker isn't Justin Field, will never be Justin Field, but he can do similar-ish things. That being said, PJ Walker has been nothing short of awful this preseason.
Oh, he's been terrible.
He's been god-awful. Like, unwatchable awful.
I almost think it doesn't matter, if that makes sense, because I think they're going to keep 3 quarterbacks, especially with this new emergency quarterback rule. I think Hogan Johns had a really good interview today with Josh Lucas, right? Former.
I haven't had the chance to listen yet.
It's really good. Go ahead and listen to it. He does a good. I'm surprised he was as open as he was with some of the conversation he had. But one of the things he brings up, it sounds very cold and callous, but it's so true. You win games with your first 30 players on your team. You don't win games because of the last 10. And he even went as far as saying, that last 5 to 10-ish people on the end of your roster, they're interchangeable. And that's rough to hear, but to an extent they are. Like your 53rd, 52nd person is not going to make or break your team, unfortunately, for that person.
Yeah. I mean,
but on top of that, if you I hate this word because it has a tarnish to it now, but conviction that Tyson Bagent eventually, maybe next year or whatever, could be your viable backup. You do not put him to waivers just in case some quarterback needy team snags him. You hold 3 quarterbacks. One's going to be inactive on game day. That's fine. Just decide that day who that's going to be, depending on what you're seeing in practice and all that jazz. And you move on with your life. I don't know. I don't think it matters who's 2 and who's 3 right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do agree with that wholeheartedly. And I do think Bagent's made it from they're not going to carry 2. Maybe we can sneak him onto the practice squad too. If you want him, you're going to have to keep him on the 53. He's played too well.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I found the acronym. So all those Price people and Rice people. So no more of that. It's peace and love. I can't believe I forgot that. So that stands for protection, elevation, avoid anti-inflammatories, compression, education, and load, optimism, vascularization, exercise. The love part is super important. Don't just sit with your foot hanging in the air. You got to load it. You got to exercise, move it. Anyway, that was my mini soapbox thing about that.
You're welcome, listeners.
Yes. And last bit here before we get into some Buffalo Bills talk, running back one competition. And if you're listening to the podcast, I'm putting it in air quotes. I guess it's open. The running backs coach said that, I'm blanking. Herbert is the RB1, but that at the same time, Eberflus is talking about how we'll see what happens between running back 2, running back 3, da-da-da-da-da. Let's say once the roster is set, you have your 53 for week 1. Does it matter again?
No, because I just don't think they're going to have some running back last year like Montgomery when he was healthy who's going to be taking 75% of the carries. Now, I'm spitballing that number. I don't know what the percentage was that Montgomery actually got, but he was outpacing Herbert when he was healthy. And that's one thing I think we're going to miss about Montgomery was just cyborg Wolverine, whatever he was, not to go off on a tangent, but he just never seemingly got seriously hurt despite how it looked. But I think you're going to see a lot of Deontay Foreman was a good, productive, efficient runner last year, one of the 5 most efficient runners in the league. Same thing with Khalil Herbert. They both have inadequacies that Travis Homer doesn't have in terms of pass blocking and pass catching. Ones that Roschon Johnson doesn't have in terms of versatility and ability to line up in different areas. Like, say, if they want to run him as a fullback and sometimes just to get him on the field with a Khalil Herbert or a Deontay Foreman. I think they're going to use these guys a lot by committee. Now, and I know that's not been the MO of Green Bay in the past, where they were literally just running 2 running backs and the 3rd and 4th guys are just special teamers or emergency players, per a conversation I had with Jonathan Wood earlier today. But that's not Getsy's offense. That was an offense he was a staff member on, but this is his offense. Like, I don't see a situation in which these guys aren't all getting some touches.
Right, exactly. And then week to week, that should change too, right? I mean, week 1, it's a, 60, 20, 20 split. And then all of a sudden it flips where it's, 40, 30, 30. Like, and then it's going to be all over the place. I don't think, like, for example, from a fantasy football perspective, I don't know that any one of these running backs is someone that you're going to be like happy having on your fantasy team, because you're not going to know what you're going to get any single week. And I fully believe, and this is still maybe just me drinking the Kool-Aid, that by the last 4 weeks of the season, that more consistently Roschon Johnson will be out snapping the other 2. But that's just my thought process.
That's my thought process as well, especially because a 4th-round pick on running back is a high pick. And J2K brought up a point. There's some people saying that Deontay Foreman could be a surprise cut. Maybe, and I know Poles had the quote where he was like, well, you're surprised he was there. Guys, you got to take some of these quotes GMs say about the draft with a grain of salt. How many times do we hear a guy that got in the 3rd round was number 1 on their board or top 5 on their board and would have been a 1st rounder for them, or had they been picking later in the round? It's speak to get to be excited about a guy they got. All things being equal, Roschon Johnson was projected to be a 3rd or 4th round pick because of workload in college and just him not having a ton of film. It's the nature of it. Could they be really excited to have him? Yes, that can be true. Could they also be overselling the fact that they were completely and utterly shocked that he was there? Yes, they could. That could also be true. Because I think personally they were trying to draft a center in that round or in round 3, and they got sniped.
Yeah, like the likes of Juice Scruggs,
Ricky Stromberg.
Yeah, I think they went later. They went earlier than they expected them to go.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, 100% agreed. I mean, at some point, yes, you got to make some cuts somewhere. The whole Tevin Jenkins thing makes it complicated. How many linemen do you keep? I think it's only 6 receivers. The edge is another group. That's like, well, how many of those guys do you keep? At some point, you got to start making some harder cuts. I just don't necessarily think it's going to be the running back room. I truly believe they're going to carry those 3 we just talked about. I think they're going to keep Travis Homer because of special teams and because of his third down ability. And then Kyrie Blasingame also counts in there. So I think you're going to have 5 running backs.
Yeah, I agree with that. And especially because I don't think I'm going much on a limb. I think they're probably going to be close to the most run-heavy team in the league. They're just going to run the ball. Like, right or wrong, it's just that they were the second most efficient running team in the league, and I believe they led the league in rushing yards last year. They're going to run the football.
Yeah, exactly. It's a part of that whole offensive style, right? It's part of the DNA of that offense. And you have very explosive running backs. I mean, everything from the advanced stats for Herbert are fantastic in terms of his explosiveness. We don't really know much about Roschon, there's potential. And we saw that Deontay Foreman was also one of the most efficient runners last year when he got the reins when CMC was traded. So, and Deontay Foreman would be a running back 1 on a handful of teams across the NFL. Like, you're not just going to cut that person. I just don't see it.
The other part of it is kind of going back to the Montgomery thing of him being Cyborg or Wolverine. One of these backs is going to get nicked up.
Yep.
It's the nature of that position where they're going to miss 3 weeks. They're going to yank a hamstring, or they're going to get concussed, or they're going to, sprain an ankle, whatever it might be. Turf toe, I know, is another real common running back injury. Where these guys it's going to happen. Like, say what you want about Montgomery and his inabilities. He was healthy a lot. Why would you cut a productive, cheap NFL running back because he just doesn't fit your roster? It doesn't make sense to me. And you're not going to get anything from him to trade.
Be inconsequential compared to.
Right. Sorry. And I'm not like some sort of Foreman truther. It's just
Little Buffalo Bills preseason game preview. I don't think there's a ton to talk about here, but this is going to be only the second time and the last time we get to see some of the starters, whoever that might be, before week 1 of the season. So what are you looking for out of the starters on offense? What are you looking for on the starters of the defense that play?
Starters on offense, some sort of continuity, get in and out of the huddle well, which I know sounds really mundane and stupid to some listeners. Like, just get it, but it matters. Get in and out of the huddle, get lined up, run, have Justin throw downfield a little bit. Like you said, he had literally negative air yards in his 3 attempts this preseason. Have him try some stuff. Like, I know fans hate hearing about the interceptions in practice, and they don't want to see him throw picks against vanilla defenses in preseason. It's practice, guys. At a certain point, you just got to try shit. See if it works. See if he makes a mistake, learn from it. Like, I want to see him make a few throws. I would truthfully, if things broke the way I would like them to in an ideal world, I would like to see the first team offense out there for a quarter. But is that logical? I don't know.
I'm going to go back to what I said for preseason game 1, where I want to see one sustained 10 to 12 play. The defense made you dink and dunk and earn your way to a touchdown, to a score, because that was something that's we saw in week 1 of the preseason that they can get explosive plays. We saw last year they can get explosive plays. Sometimes it's through the air, and more often than not, it was through the ground, right? But can you, when the defense says, nope, we're going to hold you here, can you make that 10 to 12 play drive and make the medium throws, right? Can you make that 2-yard flat throw that becomes 6? Can you make that 12-yard dig pass that you need? That's what I really would like to see out of them on
I agree with
Sunday.
that. And to that point, I always called it the death by 1,000 paper cuts. Like you're trying to get off the field. You're trying to get off the field. You're not, because they're getting 4, they're getting 4, they're getting 5, they're getting 3. Yeah, the DJ Moore touchdown and the Khalil Herbert touchdown were great. The throws weren't accurate. On the screen plays you make or on the little out routes you throw, be accurate. Even if you're accurate 2 out of 3 or 1 out of every 2, like where it doesn't feel like, oh God, they had to adjust. That feels good. That feels better than DJ Moore having to boot scoot or back scoot 2 steps to go get the football and then run upfield.
Right.
But that's why you pay DJ Moore. I'm not saying make every throw perfect. No, I'm saying just make it so it looks a little easier once in a while.
Considering he's been back defensively, I'm hoping to see Tremaine Edmonds and see what he looks like in this defense. Just what impression he's going to make. How hard is it going to be for Josh Allen? And that's actually a really good example. Josh Allen, someone who's got a really strong arm, sometimes has a little touch issue. How does he throw up and around someone like a Tremaine Edmonds? And then, also against a mobile quarterback, what does this pass rush look like? Now, it's not going to be anything crazy. We know that, but they're not going to do all these different stunts. But I used to list that as a position that's kind of a crowded room, but at the same time, like not the best room. So who's going to set themselves apart and say, no, I need a spot in this team?
It's a good one. I want to, if you're saying to that degree, when the starters are out there, I would like to see if against this receiver grouping with Diggs and Gabe Davis and all these guys, I want to see if that level of swagger and saltiness kind of holds up, where you see them, even if it's like an incomplete pass that Allen just turfs. Like, are you still being that way? Like, I would like to see if that continues to carry over. Yeah. It's dumb, but I really believe, especially in football, more than any other sport, these mental gymnastics these guys put themselves through to get themselves fired up and get themselves ready.
And I guess lastly, just one like random deep cut kind of one. Who's the first? Who's the second? Who's the third one? Not the returning punts. I'm just going to be curious on what that looks like. Right now, Velus hasn't practiced in a while, so I don't know if he's going to be playing in this game. I would lean towards no. If he's not, is Dante Pettis back there? It's just going to be one of those things where it's a problem until it's not. So
that's the one guy I got in terms of Velus may make it through the initial 53-man cut. I'm not convinced that he will, but I have a feeling, like you alluded to, or not alluded to, but said earlier in the show, the bottom 8 guys on this roster kind of don't matter. They just don't.
You're absolutely right. I hate saying it because I do know some of the players and all that. They're interchangeable. The 50th player is not going to be the reason you win week 12.
Yeah. So I'm not wondering if we see like another 5, 6, 7 waiver claims. And Velus might be one of the first guys off because a kick returner gets waived. Like that, it's just something to keep an eye on, especially because he's just not a good punt returner. And I saw in our chat, Jacob Infante mentioned it, that is being the best kick return in the NFL any more valuable than being the best fullback in the NFL anymore? I don't.
I would probably say the best fullback. I'd rather take like a
Kyle
like today.
Juszczyk.
Yeah, I was gonna say like if like literally like today, if you could give me the option between a Kyle Juszczyk, who I was gonna go with, and I'm gonna break some hearts here, or like Devin Hester. I mean, I'm just gonna, and he can only play kick return. Like we're not saying punt return. I'm gonna take Kyle Juszczyk because I can use him a lot.
Yeah.
At this point, you're just gonna kick it out of the damn end zone every damn time.
Right. So I kind of don't care that Velus' value is that he's a really good kick returner. Like, I can find kick returners on the street.
I keep going back to the comments that Poles had, specifically even again back on another Hogan Johns episode, where it seemed like they were going to give Velus every damn opportunity possible to lose that job. And this is even after the miscues in that first week. So we'll see.
Yeah, we will.
All right, that's all we got tonight. Got stuff to do, place to be. If you're here live, really appreciate that. Thank you for interacting in the chat. Always love the questions. Come back, do that again. We're going to answer get to as many comments as possible. If you're listening to the podcast later, throw some comments on YouTube, something like that, so we know you're listening, and we'll always try to respond to those as we go. But we appreciate y'all tuning in with us every Thursday. The next couple weeks are going to be a little. We're not 100% sure what that's going to look like. I mean, there's not really going to be a lot of football to talk about. Maybe roster cut stuff, maybe not. But other than so, we may not have another episode till before week 1. If we don't, we'll see you then. But otherwise, yeah, maybe we'll sneak another one in. Who knows? Bye.
Time will tell. Toodaloo.